All right, guys, I'm here with Mr. Dallas. Mr. Dallas, can you introduce yourself to people?
Diamond Dallas Page.
Diamond Dallas Page.
3-time world champion, professional wrestling, WWE Hall of Famer. Like our world championship, as opposed to your guys, ours is like more like an Oscar, and because it's all, we're out there putting on a show, but at the same time, it's like a really violent dance.
Mm-hmm. How is it, like the damage wise? Like,
I always tell people you can't fake gravity, know. And for me personally, I didn't start in professional wrestling until I was 35 and a half. Mm-hmm. My career didn't take off till I was 40. So, that was in 96. 97 and 98, I rose to as high as you could go. And I've had many injuries, but when I blew my back out, I ruptured my L4 and L5, which is a great example because that's where my whole DDP Yoga program came from. It was out of necessity. The wear and tear, it wasn't the power bomb that I took. It was all of the wear and tear. Mm-hmm. And when you're finally get to being a top guy in professional wrestling, you're wrestling 270 nights a year, minimum. Like you might wrestle 290 days. And then your days home or off is when you're traveling home. And you're traveling out, the day after that to go back on the road. And, just the wear and tear of, a lot of people would, think about driving 100, 200, 300 miles. That was every night for us. You get done wrestling, and then you hop in the car. And back when you're at the bottom of the card, you're in the smallest cars. You're jammed in. There's a bunch of 250, 300-pound guys, 3, 4 guys in a mid-sized car. And then you got to drive 100, 200, 300 miles to the next town, get a hotel, check in, carry your bags in, carry your bags out, and go on to that next place to wrestle. Or, we could be doing TV. And a lot of people think because they see TV on Monday nights and Friday nights or whenever that league has their nights that it's live, usually WWE is the biggest example. WCW is the same way. And you wrestle on Monday night, Thursday night. So people thought you just wrestled then. And then once a month at a pay-per-view. I wrestled 26 days that month. So, like I said, you can't fake gravity. And the wear and tear on your body is permanent. You can get things fixed. I've a rotator cuff tear back when I first started, when I was 36. And then they let me go. You finally got to that spot of being on the show, but now you're off the show.
Wow, just because you said you were injured, or
no? I tore my rotator cuff,
so you couldn't.
And now I'm out. My contract was up, and they went like, "Okay, goodbye." And now, do you continue to follow the dream, or do you check out and get a real job? I wasn't ready for. I never had a real job in my life. Like everything I've ever done, I've loved to do it. And that's why I try to teach people all the time. Find something you love to do. And then it doesn't matter how many hours you're doing it, because you're doing something you love. So it's really not like you're working.
Yeah.
And my whole, work career, when I was 17, I started in the bar business. And I ran, at the beginning I was a bouncer and a bar back and a bartender. And by the time I was 23, I was running from small clubs. So by the time I was 6 years later, or really 3 years later, I was running huge clubs, huge nightclubs. And I tried to wrestle when I was 23. And I had 3 matches. I hurt my knee. And I was going to take a month off and then get back on the grind, at 23 years old. But I got a chance to run my first little rock and roll bar. And then the booze, the broads, and the party took me on a different journey, And then it was 79 when I was wrestling. I'm going to be 66 in April. And I loved the bar business, but the dream was wrestling. And wrestling blew up in the 80s with WrestleMania. And I was so pissed that I didn't pay my dues to be ready for that. Because I just knew if I just sort of kept paying my dues, I would have been on my way to that. But I didn't. And I was so pissed, I stopped watching wrestling.
Wow.
And let it go for years. And then one day I was flicking the channels. Now I'm running a huge club. Holds 1,200, 1,500 people in Fort Myers, Florida, called Norma Jean's Dance Club. And I was flicking the channels one afternoon, and I came across the WWE. And I thought, let me watch for a couple minutes. And the guy who walked out of the curtain, first match, he had a bag over his shoulder, and I didn't realize it, but there was a snake in the bag, and it was Jake the Snake Roberts, and he was so believable. Like his interviews, his work in the ring. I mean, I couldn't see through it. I was so believable, it sucked me back in as a fan. And then about a year later, he rolled in my club. Like in this club, in Fort Myers, Florida. See, if you wrestle in WWE or WCW and you wrestle Tampa one night, the next night you'd wrestle Miami, or vice versa, Miami to Tampa. That's 300 miles. Right in the middle is Fort Myers. So it was like a stopover spot. And when I met Jake, I was so, blown away by, that this guy, I mean, he was bigger than life character. And we became drinking buddies. And he just told the boys to come in the club, and guys started coming in between those two spots, Miami and Tampa. And it wasn't every month, but it was every couple of months, because that was probably a town that they did every 4 months. So guys would come through. And it started to get my interest back in wrestling. And just to, spark something inside me. So at 31, I came up with the idea of me becoming a manager, like a guy who talks for the wrestlers. And I got a gig. I made it happen. It should have never happened, but it did. And certain people have a destiny. And if they keep working towards that destiny, there's a really good chance they're going to hit it. And there's going to be a lot of pitfalls. There's going to be a lot of failures. I've failed a bunch of times. But it's not about how many times you fall down. It's about how many times you get back up again. Whether it's, in jiu-jitsu, in tournaments, or in life. And I came in as a manager and a color commentator, and I developed real relationships with people. Wasn't making any money for 3.5 years. It cost me money to be Diamond Dallas Page. And by the time I got to WCW, which was 3.5 years later, I came in as a manager and a color commentator. And 5 months into it, because back then I had long blonde hair and I wore leopard skin jackets. 80s, rock and roll. 80s rock and roll look. Zebra skin boots. I had holes in my jeans in the 80s. And a lot of crazy pictures on these walls. But they eventually wouldn't let me manage the guys anymore because the hair and the rap, and I had diamond dolls, and I could talk really good, and it was taking too much attention away from the wrestlers.
Oh, okay.
So basically, I had 7 months left of my contract, and I was like, my dream's over before it starts. Finally got to the show, and then I'm going down that power plant. I'm gonna learn how to wrestle. I was 35 and a half. Everybody laughed at me, and at that time, going down to that cold, gym, which would be a warehouse with 4 rings in it. I can't tell you how many times my body hit that ring in the beginning. And I thought, man, this fake shit hurts like hell. Ain't nothing fake about gravity.
That gravity hit.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you, Alec, how many times I hit the mat. I thought, do I really want to do this? Like our buddy Marlon, which is how we ended up getting together. Marlon did it. Marlon went for a day of wrestling training in Chicago. It's a whole, 20, they're going to do work, maybe 6-hour day. They took off for lunch. He never came back.
Oh, no.
Because it beat him up so bad. He didn't realize, oh, wow, this shit hurts.
Was this Big Marlon?
Was it?
When he was big?
He wasn't that big. Okay. decent size. He wasn't huge. He wasn't jacked like that. But he was still, he was a good size, So, and today, and people would say, back in the '80s, you had to be huge to be a wrestler. Today, there's guys 150 pounds that are stealing the show in main events. So, it depends on how great an athlete you are. Mm-hmm. What kind of, chances you can take and survive. So, coming on my journey, it was very physical, it was very rigorous, and, I lived a dream at a different level. But what looked like the worst thing that happened to me when I blew my back out, I was told by 3 spine specialists, I'm never going to wrestle again. Mm-hmm. I just signed a multi-million-dollar 3-year deal. If I don't wrestle, I don't get paid.
The doctor's like, you can't wrestle. Like
3 of them.
3 of them.
And I'm talking about the best spine specialists in the country. I had one here in Atlanta, New York, and LA. And Houston. And they all said the same thing. You're done. And that's where yoga came into my life. And I'm the guy who wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga the first 42 years of my life. Because I just I didn't see it. I was too ignorant to it. And I started doing it. And because I was super depressed, when I tell me my career's over, 3 guys who really know what they're talking about, supposedly, I guess they just didn't know my tenacity. I'm relentless, man. If I believe in something, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna live it. I'm gonna make it happen. And I mixed yoga, which gave me a lot of promise. I felt like this is really helping, and I mixed it with a rehab. And then I mixed it with old school calisthenics, and then, put in the dynamic resistance that I had you doing today. And it really, within 3 months, I was back in the ring. Mm-hmm. And my doctor, the main guy was here in Atlanta, Dr. Edwards. And he was like, I have never seen a bounce back like that. And he gave me, I had a policy with Lloyd's of London that if I got injured, they have to pay me. And they renewed it and kept it going because I was okay. I wasn't okay though. I was really, I wrestled. I would ice, when I left the building, I would ice both knees, both shoulders, and my back, leaving the building just to try to keep the inflammation out.
Did you guys do ice baths back then, or was that a thing?
Not really a thing. Guys they didn't even understand using ice. Bro, I am the first guy to use ice in an ice bag, with a twist off lids. I'd take ace bandage and put it around my knees so I could walk around. I would just stick them underneath my t-shirt on both sides. I called them my shoulder pants, and then I'd slide it back behind my back, and that's, hopped in the car and drove 100, 200, 300 miles. Nobody iced but me. And then they brought trainers in, and then some guys did when they got hurt. Only when they got hurt. Preventative maintenance. And that's what my DDP Yoga program is all about. It's like, you don't wait till you get hurt to do it. If you do it when you're a stud, you're going to strengthen so many little muscles in you. And everybody is, especially in professional athletes. When I say that, I say, UFC fighters, WWE probably the easiest on it, because if you're a top guy and you get injured, they're going to try to fix you and bring you back. If you're not a top guy, you get injured, you're done. They're only going to, you get injured once, twice, you're absolutely done. But the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, you get that one big injury, unless you are the top money player, like Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys quarterback, he's going to come back. And they got a lot invested in him.
They get surgery next day, almost.
Right there, probably that
right
day,
there in the back.
Yeah, well, they're going to the best doctors. But if you're like a lineman or a running back, and you tear your ACL, 99% of those guys are done.
Yeah.
And look at Todd Gurley. Played for Atlanta last year. He played for he tore his ACL, and you're thinking he's done. Well, he came back for 2 years strong. Then now he's he needs. I tried to talk him into doing my program, but certain guys get it and certain guys don't get it, and it's all about preventative maintenance. I would have loved to work with Todd, because him coming back as a guy who could run, for 1,800 yards in a season. It's going to be interesting to see because as you get older, running backs don't have that much shelf life.
No.
And when they do, if they do have a long shelf life, they're beat up bad. It's all time it's over.
Why do you think the ego gets in the way like that?
I think that EGO word is the biggest word out there. I have a T-shirt that a friend of mine printed, and it says "Ego kills talent."
Yeah.
You have to be humble, and and I've worked with some of cage fighters and stuff that they have so many things to do when they're training for a fight. Adding one more thing,
it can be.
Yeah, it can be taxing. But to me, I want the glue. A great example would be Chris Jericho. He wrestles for AEW. He's had a ridiculous run. He's been at 20 years in. He was 41. He started by 19. He was 22 years in, and he blew his back out just like I did. Have you ever seen the disabled veteran that I helped walk again? Marlon didn't make you watch that video? Marlon?
Arthur Boorman?
Arthur Boorman.
Okay. I did watch.
Okay, good job, Marlon. Good job. Marlon was cussing you right there, right up to that moment. I know he's watching.
For my research, I watched Relentless, so that was like my research.
Oh, yeah. Marlon, he gets everybody to watch that because I normally won't even do an interview because if you see that transformation, I sent that to Chris Jericho when he blew his back out. And he called me back 5 minutes later and he's like, I will do whatever you tell me to do. Just send me it and I'll do it. So I put him on the program. 5 weeks later, he was 85% pain-free. Now, up till that point, they were saying his career is over. 3 months later, he headlined with CM Punk and, signed a multi-million-dollar deal. Well, that was 10 years ago. Now he's 51. He's still going. Mm-hmm. And he'll talk about my stuff all the time because he wants to share it with other people. Mm-hmm. And he just signed another multi-million-dollar deal, multi-year deal at 51, which is insane.
Yeah, and if he didn't, take that step back and reach out, or you reached out to him, but,
right.
You had to follow
if he didn't have the ego.
Yeah.
And he didn't have an ego. He just wanted to keep, being able to do what he loved. Mm-hmm. And, he's also a rock star and a podcast star. I mean, the guy does multiple things. So it's not like he needs wrestling, mm-hmm. To keep him going. But if I was an athlete and I watched wrestling and I saw what Chris Jericho, how is he doing it? That's how. Because it's like his secret weapon that he uses on top of the lifting and the conditioning and all of that. But you saw just by working out with me, this is a conditioning program. Where you walked in with a 72 heart rate, tuck the tailbone, now hit him, flex squat, you be tight as fuck, flex the glutes, grab the ball, open those fingers wide, inhale on a touchdown, height, exhale, bring it down, push them together, tight, pull those pinkies wide, take it back, arms out to a T, hold it up, tension, take it back, tight, at ease. You'll be engaging your muscles, you're up to 109. You walked in at 72.
Yeah.
And at some point you were over 160. Did that blow you away?
Yeah, just being able to see that live was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm working hard.
So again, most people don't put a heart monitor. Mm-hmm. Orange Theory kind of made it, because they do heart monitors all the time in their little gyms that they do with their 20-minute workouts. But I've been using a heart monitor for over 20 years, because you want to see where you are, when you're working out, especially, if you want to get the most out of a workout. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys want to keep working out in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s and 60s. Well, you really want to have one then, because then you want to maximize your time,
Mm-hmm. I think, especially in jiu-jitsu, I'm sure MMA and other sports, they overtrain so much. Especially as you get older, you're trying to do what you're doing at 20, in your 30s. Yeah.
Ain't happening. Now, if you train smarter as opposed to harder, mm-hmm. The harder part comes, no pain, no gain works when you're under 25. There are guys that can do it up till they're 30. Mm-hmm. But really, after you're 30, pain means pain. Mm-hmm. And like, don't do that. Work around that. So I train smart, you know, and my heart rate's too high a lot of times when I'm doing it, but I'm conditioned that way because it's all, most people don't understand, like in the military, when they're doing their runs, you know, they're chanting, I don't know what I've been told, I don't, you know, like it's part of their conditioning. When you are vocally, and it took me a while to get you to start counting. 4 and one more. 10,
9,
8,
7,
6,
5,
4,
3,
2, 5 and hold. 10,
9,
8,
7,
6,
5,
4,
3,
2, 5 with control. 10,
9,
8,
7,
6,
5,
4,
3,
2, 5. Lower your knees. Cat lift. Those are motherfuckers, aren't they?
Yeah, it took a second.
And being involved with the process verbally, well, you're going to get extra heart rate beats from that. Mm-hmm. Because it's harder. Watch, you know, all these NBA guys, they're so finely conditioned. But if you catch a guy on a court or on a football field, if you see him down like this at any point, they're blown sky high. Mm-hmm. Like they can't even talk. The guys who can talk shit later on, and they look at the, like there's some guys like Nate Diaz, like he never shuts up. You know, fucking Chuck Liddell back in his heyday, he talked shit all the way through it. He was finely conditioned, man. And really, most of the guys that I found are like that in all mixed martial arts. But the part of what I get you doing and getting involved in the counting and the thinking, the chanting at 1, 1, 1, 2 or 3, 2, 1, it's mainly to take you off of being in that lunge that long too, because you don't realize how long you're in it because you're focusing on other things.
Yeah, it definitely helped me just all right. It just puts me more into it. I got more into it, more involved, more focused. Just chanting or counting.
Right.
I want to take a step back.
Sure.
I got personal questions too, guys.
Sure.
How do you go about developing a stage presence? Because I know, obviously, well-known wrestler, famous wrestlers, all have like a stage presence.
Sure.
Is that something you develop, or like you just naturally?
I was kind of lucky because I'm kind of, a lot of guys are introverts. Mm-hmm. Like Sting, who's one of my very good friends. He's still wrestling in his 60s, which is crazy to me. But he's an introvert. He's shy. But when he gets out there and he becomes Sting, then he becomes that bigger than life wrestling persona. For me, I'm a people person. Mm. And where I really got my experience for years was running nightclubs. Because most of them, the big clubs that I ran, we would have like hot legs contests on Wednesday. We'd have, back then different contests, lip sync contests or, bikini contests, stuff that I was the MC. So I was very used to going out there and having fun and keeping people entertained. So I was just on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, and he brought something back from back when I was managing and talking for the guys back from 1988. And I mean, I literally probably I would work one day a month and we'd film 4 TV shows. So I worked one day. Mm-hmm. So if I'm 6 months in, I work 6 days. So, and the way you get better is reps. And I don't care what it is, from, Tom Brady and his receivers to MMA. It's like reps. And that's why guys train so hard going into a camp. A lot of guys get hurt.
Oh, yeah. They're training super hard.
And you really somebody should be going like, wait a minute. Maybe we should train a little smarter. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of my stuff comes in, because like, coming in, I don't know how I would have them train as the overall master trainer, in the camp, but I know what I'd want to get out of it. And I want whoever is in that camp getting ready to come out not just in the best shape of their life, but not injured at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's so hard because you got to go hard. But
Yeah.
do you really? You know,
The guys are getting smarter. A long time, 90s, they were knocking each other out like on the daily. That's why, some of the
Right.
guys, can't even talk or move almost. But they're getting a little bit better.
well, it's whatever camp starts to train the smartest will have the best results. It's like the NBA or the NFL. Whatever team's the healthiest coming into it, now you've got to throw the COVID thing in. And that's kind of like you can't really, because then you're down for whatever amount of time. And then you're coming back sick, so which means you're going to be really susceptible to injuring yourself. So again, what do you do to fight the injury? Back to your question though, for me, I was constantly in front of people. And when you're constantly in front of people and you're in a DJ booth and you're rocking the house and on the microphone, by the time I got there, I had an idea of how to command people, but it wasn't the character I would end up playing. What I ended up doing, it took me 8 years, to really find and like be one of the biggest names in the business. It took me 8 years to get there. And what I attributed it to was when Paige Joseph Falkenberg, which was my name before I changed it to Dallas Page, which was like 25 years ago. When Paige Joseph Falkenberg stopped trying to be this bigger than life wrestling persona, and Diamond Dallas Page started taking on the characteristics of Paige Joseph Falkenberg, that's when my career started to take off. Because I just talked about what I really do. And I was the hardest working guy in professional wrestling. And I had real relationships with guys that helped me come up. But if I didn't work so hard, they never would have done it. I
got a lot of personal questions. I think they're pretty cool for everybody. If you experience a lot of fame, celebrity in your life, do you think being older and experiencing that was better for you versus say you were 21
100%.
and you had the same fame? And
at 21, you don't know how to handle that. And if I would have kept wrestling at 23, like I do a podcast now. We just started last week. We were the #1 wrestling podcast, breaking out it broke on Tuesday, January 4th, and it's up every Tuesday from here on out. But me and Jake the Snake Roberts, my guy who pulled me in, who became one of my best friends, who became my mentor. Him and Dusty Rhodes were my mentors. And Jake and I were talking about, because we have a host, this guy named Conrad, who runs all these different podcasts. And he was like, so he goes, what do you think it would have been like if you guys came up together? Because if I kept wrestling at 23, we both agreed that if we would have done that, as much as Jake was an addict, and I was a crazy partier too, we would probably both be dead. So I think many kids don't know how to handle it. Like one of the hardest things I did was becoming a wrestler at 35 and a half. And it was so hard. But best thing I did was starting at 35 and a half because I was way smarter. I'd already been in the nightclub business and had the hottest clubs. And then you have all these new friends. And then when you're not running that club, most of them are gone.
Yeah, they're gone.
Like poof. And it's a wake-up call. So when I became like one of the biggest names in the world, and then I'm retired, like I was ready for that. And I still kept a lot because if you wrestled a part of the 90s crew, when wrestling took off in 1995 and blew sky high in 1996, like the 80s, it was really over. But in 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, we had 3 times the people watching that they did. I've run into people every single day, and it was really cool, to be in that spot and changing lives because people saw, here's this guy in his 40s. Like I became like the benchmark of someone going, I'm not too old. I'm not too old because look what Diamond Dallas Page did. And doing it the way I did it. So it laid a huge, foundation for me to do DDP Yoga. And DDP Yoga came out of wrestling and came out of me blowing my back out and being told I'm done. And I always tell people, if you can just keep moving forward, sometimes, and this has happened to me over and over again, the worst thing that happened to me ended up to be the best. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's like the worst thing that happens to most people, and then they just get sucked down with emotional gravity, and they never really kick out. And the bottom line is, if you don't turn it around, like the biggest names in the world go down. Rock did a whole thing. Dwayne Johnson did a whole thing on depression. The biggest star in the world. Oh yeah, it's on YouTube. Okay, and he talks about it a lot. The Rock goes down. Trump goes down. Obama goes down. Oprah goes down. Tom Brady goes down. LeBron James, they go down. They're the biggest people in the world. They go down.
And like, I mean, their ups are like, you know, all the way here. Their downs got to be like
brutal. Yeah. But they turn it around. Mm-hmm. They don't stay there. They don't stay there. When friggin' Brady loses, the guy's the most winning quarterback of all time. The guy's got insane work ethic. I love him because he's 44 and he's still kicking ass. He does everything I do. Or you could say I do everything he does. But I've been doing it for 20 years.
You got some time.
You know? So the bottom line is I just love it because he changes the meaning of the word. And what I mean by that, you don't look 44. There's nobody who's been a quarterback in 44. Done anything like it. But when he loses, if he gets the Super Bowl this year and he loses, trust me, he's going to go down. It's going to rip it away. It was so close. But then eventually he's going to flip it right back up. Mm-hmm. Because the whole secret to that is focusing on what you have as opposed to what you don't have. Mm-hmm. And every one of those people I mentioned, they have everything. Yeah. You know what I mean? But a lot of rich people aren't happy. Mm-hmm. You know, it ain't so much about the money, you know, as opposed to being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And being what I've found, no matter what, and my whole life is helping people today. And it took me 8 years to be an overnight success. You know, you saw Relentless. I was $548,000 in before I made a dime. If you want to really see like who Diamond Dallas Page is, I always say, watch the resurrection of Jake the Snake first. Like, Jake helped me and guided me. And in our podcast, DDP Snakepit, the first 2 episodes are just about, they know, a lot of people who watch the resurrection of Jake the Snake know what I did for Jake and brought him into my house and helped him get off booze and pills and coke and crack. It took, 2 years and he fell down a number of times throughout it. But the bottom line is today, he's 8 years sober, mm-hmm. and he's a different cat. Like, I don't know this Jake the Snake Roberts. And, those first 2 episodes of DDP's Snake Pit is me explaining to people through our stories why I did that. Mm-hmm. Because without him, I don't have all this. Him and Dusty, they helped me build a foundation and smartened me up throughout my career.
Something, I watched Relentless. Something that really sat with me was just the power of helping people. I felt like that was the catalyst for DDP Yoga expanding, growing. Were you always like that? Were you always like looking to help people, or just like?
Yeah, I think. I'll give you an example. In WCW, back with Ted Turner's World Championship Wrestling, when we were we beat WW's ass for almost 2 years. Like we were the wrestling company in the world. Mm-hmm. I helped at least 30 guys get jobs. Right? Guys live a dream. And most likely, easily 20 of them never would have lived. Yeah. So I was always doing that. There was a Bible thumper, motivational speaker by the name of Zig Ziglar. Mm-hmm. And Zig, God, some of his quotes are just like unbelievable. And something he said, and he didn't say it exactly like this, but I make every one of those quotes my own. But I give Zig the credit because that's where I originally heard this version of this. And he said, you can get whatever you want as long as you help enough people get what they want. That's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
And it's called karma. And the problem with it, and I'm guilty of this as well, because when I moved out to LA to pursue my acting career, I'd helped so many people. I was expecting that to come back
immediately, like
not even like this. It's not immediately, but I helped a lot of people who were in Hollywood. You know, I'd helped people with relationships and building stuff, and nobody. I was in a dark spot for a while there, you know, and that's where focusing on DDP Yoga became my salvation, because I figured, all right, here's what's going to happen. And I have to see the idea, and every goal, every vision I've had has either been a little to the left, a little to the right, a little bit under, or I blew right past it. Like, it's so important to have the vision. Like, and I talk about this in DDP Snakepit in detail, like when I came up with the idea of Diamond Dallas Page as a manager, and his wrestlers would be from the Diamond Exchange, and they have the Diamond Dolls, and all these things I imagined in my brain, it was just in my brain. And then people started to hear me talk about it, and like a radio guy named Smitty wanted me to come on his show, and I don't really do it, dude. He's like, but he saw me talking about it on this Party News Network thing, and he's like, oh man, I want you to come on. Like, dude, I don't really do it. I'm just making up shit, you know. You know, so when people say it, I heard Gary Vee one day say he doesn't believe in this. Gary Vee's a pretty over guy right now on the internet, and a guy people listen to. But he said, fake it till you make it. That's all bullshit. I'm like, what? Fake it till you make it is everything. Because you got to really feel it. You got to really believe that it could happen, even if it's bullshit. And then a little bit turns into reality. Then a little bit turns into reality. Then before you know it, you're living that life. And that I know for a fact. And the reason when I say my goals are high always, like I just put you in, which we'll come back and we'll talk about this another time, but I just put you in some BFR straps that I've created through this, company that's been working with me, doing all the technical work. That's going to change the face of fitness. And that's the boldest statement that you could have. It's going to change the face of fitness. And it ain't going to happen right away. But by 2004, it'll be making a dent. 2005, it'll be everywhere. And again, I see it as changing the face of fitness. That's a bold statement. But so was, I want to be a world champion. I'm going to be a Hall of Famer. Bold statement. And this whole time, last 20 years, when I went out to LA, I've still been working on my acting career the whole time. Little pieces here and there. Now, I got a show coming out on Netflix.
Oh, wow.
It's going to be out second quarter of 22, and it's called The Guardians of Justice. It's my show. It's something we worked on for 7 years.
Is it your production crew as well?
No, it's not my production crew. We had other people, do this. Adi Shankar is the genius behind it. And it's called an Adi Shankar experience, and he's done a number of things. And he's a buddy of mine, a guy I made a relationship out in LA. And I was there, but we didn't get the thing going until I came back to Atlanta. So shit doesn't happen exactly when you want it to. You've got to be willing to put the time in and just keep working, even when it looks like it's not going anywhere. Because if you're working, it's going somewhere. And I always tell people, never underestimate the power someone gives you by believing in you. More importantly, never underestimate power you give yourself by believing in you. Because really, doesn't matter. No one has to believe in you but you. And it's hard sometimes. And that's why our documentary Relentless, which is also on Amazon Prime, that's why it's so important to get that message out there. Because, there are times where, people get super depressed and it's not going anywhere. Well, keep working. That's the only thing I can keep saying. And for me, I was lucky like that. that Arthur Boorman guy, the disabled vet. I did that in 2007 with him. It didn't blow up till 2012.
Wow, yeah.
It took my business partner, Steve Yu, redesigning the work that he put in, and in 3 days, we were everywhere. But the first video, even though it had the same content, it didn't have the same flow, didn't have the same music. And so the first one that came out, which I did with his son, because he filmed everything. And Steve just took it and changed it around. And I didn't even know what viral was. Back in
it was a new thing.
In 2012,
it wasn't really viral.
If something had 1 million views, that's insane. Arthur's video today, just on our YouTube page, has over 100 million views.
Oh my God! Wow.
Just on our page.
Our
Facebook page has over 250 million, and we can track it between our stuff. And there's a lot of different inspirational sites out there.
Share it and stuff.
Right. And then stuff that's, different, I think it was in 62 different languages, because there's typeset up there. He talks a little bit, but it's typeset with what he's going through. And it's been in 62 different languages. And we don't control any of that. We let people just take it and use it. So we figure it's easily over 1 billion views. And again,
people I've seen that.
Yeah, and people don't know that. Like even though I'm in it for like a second, you don't know. You don't know because you didn't put that together. I made people see it 5 times and go, man. And then I realized he did DDP Yoga.
That brings me back to Relentless, where there was a point where you're like, we can make this into a commercial or keep it, the inspirational thing.
Right. When Steve first redid the commercial, the video. I said, dude, you didn't put DDP Yoga in there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason why the first one didn't take it, because we had that a name before that we were using. We were rebranding, completely changing the brand to make it easier to instead of yoga for regular guys. And he said, well, I saw this, I read this book. He said, honestly, I read the first 3 chapters. And the main thing that they put off, if you want something to go viral, you can't be selling something. Unless it's a funny comedian, or something like that, then that could happen. But virtually, if you're trying to sell something, people aren't going to share it. And you don't want to inspire people, or do you want to do a commercial? I was like, let's inspire people. And then I watched it a couple more times. I said, dude, you called me a yogi. And I'm not like I'm like the anti-yogi, I'm like, this is yoga for people who wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga, because that's the masses, and that's the people who need it. Because the people who are doing yoga, they get it, So he goes, you know how many Facebook pages that this will end up on? Yoga people taking credit for it, and I was like, no, because I really didn't know. I didn't know the power of Facebook. The reason why my program didn't take off until 2012 was because the internet. So, Facebook was really an amazing way to get our word out. They just make it so hard now, but Twitter, Instagram, we're all over it, but it's not as much. YouTube, YouTube still gives you a lot of leniency of just be able to put your own stuff up there. And it's more about, we have so many transformations. Like, did you see the thing with Ted, the 87-year-old guy?
Yeah,
we just spent 7 months training him hip-hop. The friggin' 87-year-old white dude from fucking Macon, Georgia, okay? And like no rhythm, never listened to any hip hop. He wasn't around for him. He's 87. But he ended up doing that Usher video. And the video, with Little John and Ludacris, man, it's entertaining as hell. And it's so hard to get that one out there because they won't let you.
The music.
Right.
Yep.
So, but we put it out there. We got a really great response, and it's mainly trying to show Seniors, you're never too old. Because you can change your life at any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I'm going to be 66 in 3 more months. And like, I've already set new goals for what we're going to be doing with our boost straps and what we're going to do with that. And we're building a Pages Retreat on the water, on the Gulf, right on the beach in Panama City Beach. And that's going to be super sweet. Like, we're constantly growing and changing and building out our program to make it super accessible to people.
Do you think that demographics neglected a lot? I feel like
seniors,
yes,
100%. But we like our program. Like a lot of people, when you stop using it, you lose it.
Yeah.
And like our workouts, when people go, "Oh, I can't do your stuff. It's going to be too hard." Well, first of all, you have no idea what you're talking about. My workouts start off in bed. Like if you can't get out of bed, we got bed flex, which helps you get out of bed, and then you sit in a chair. And the same stuff I was showing you in there, the engaging, I get your heart rate jacked up sitting in a chair. Who can do that? Chair yoga don't do that. And then we build up your strength enough to get out of the chair and then hold on to a chair and use it for balance, to build balance. That's the first thing as you get older, that's the first thing you lose. Balance. That's why people fall down all the time. Plus their toes. They don't remember when I was taking you in down dog and showing you how to really break it up in your toes? Because if you watch the way old people walk, they walk like this, they don't use their toes anymore. Whether it was the shoes or just you lose. If you stop doing it, you lose it. So for me, it's all about keeping all of your body, like the hands
just
thing.
Engaging.
Like just the flexing of the hands. Like I've got arthritis running through my whole body. Like my hands want to do this. I won't let them. I'm going to fight it and fight it and fight it. And hopefully I'll never have that. But I got buddies of mine whose hands and this is where they are.
They never move. Yeah, I guess
and they can pull in, but they can't straighten them anymore. Arms can't go past here. That's why I took your arms all the way there. And how often do you do that?
Not often enough.
Never. You never, unless you're doing some kind of yoga, you never do this.
I'm pretty sure, so I gotta reach.
Yeah. But it's as an athlete, you might. But really, once that's over, no, you don't. There's nothing to make you do unless you're reaching for something in the cabinet, But that's what I try to get people doing, all different things that you normally wouldn't do. And so that you can stay mobile and feeling healthy.
Another question I have, I guess this applies to jiu-jitsu. So, we'll teach kids and, we'll have some older practitioners as well. What's the best way to go about changing someone's mentality? When they're like, I can't do this, they're negative.
It's hard to get people to do that because it's so easy to be negative. That's
you're trying to help them. They're like, I can't do it. You're like, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah. And what I normally try to do is I try to show them, okay, you don't think you can do this? Let me show you somebody. And when I show the Arthur video, like if he could do it, that kind of breaks down the wall. And then can you be consistent? It's like today I just put something up on, whether it's a quote or something that I saw, something I want people to be able to hold on to. And someone saw this today and they ended up sending me, they saw it and they sent it to me and I put it up on my page. 2022 is the year of discipline. Decide what you want, write it down, make a plan, work on it every single day. Your competition isn't other people. It's your procrastination. Compete against that. Conquer yourself. Now, one of my favorite quotes ever, well, there's two of them, my favorite. One is, if you say you can or you say you can't, you're right. It's like you've just decided what you're going to do. Henry Ford said that and made it famous. And then I always go, what the hell did he ever do? You know, and it wasn't, people think he invented the car. He didn't invent the car. He invented the assembly line, which popped those cars out. And that's why the company grew so incredibly. And there was many things that he did that had never been done before. The other quote is, the repetitions of affirmations leads to belief. Mm-hmm. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen. Now, the first time I read that, I was like, wow. And then I looked down and I was like, oh my God. I know, I'm looking at his name. I know who he is. I never heard him say that. But when I heard that, the repetitions of affirmations leads to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen. I said, I know his trend. I know his affirmation. And when I'm speaking, and I'll end my I'm going to do speak for corporation or kids or whatever, I always end with this. And I say, the repetitions of affirmations, let's break that down. That can be really good. And that can be really bad. Most times it's bad because people bury themselves.
How so?
Excuse me. I can't do this. I'll never be able to do that. I mean, no, why me? I mean, I'm not, they don't have any confidence in themselves. They consider themselves, so many people that I work with, they don't feel worthy. Mm. They don't feel like they could ever do it because they're not good enough. So that would be a negative affirmation that runs through their brain. And it could just keep going. Yeah. All of the negative things. I tell people all the time, I think the golden rule from the Bible is treat people the way they want to be treated. Well,
I don't want to be treated.
No, right. I don't want to be treated the way you speak about yourself. Mm-hmm. I'm in the platinum rule. Treat me the way I want to be treated. Because I treat myself like gold. I got a hyperbaric chamber I was in with 15 PSI, which is like being 45 feet below sea level, while I'm working on my iPhone and iPad, that's all sealed off. I'm working on what I'm doing for the day and the next day and the week and preparing something like an inspirational speech or whatever while I'm in this chamber, which is taking me down and not just oxidizing my blood. Like they tell you, eat blueberries and raspberries. If you're ever going to eat blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, which have the highest oxyoxidants or whatever they're called, don't ever eat the ones that aren't organic. Because if they're sprayed that shit on them, they're ruined. They're ruined. But hyperbaric chamber is like berries on steroids. Because it's not just oxidizing your blood. It breaks at 12 psi. It breaks the brain-blood barrier. Now oxygen goes to your brain. There's no greater healer as far as I'm concerned. You don't have to believe it or not, but oxygen. And there's just been too many stories, that have been documented of people who couldn't have radiation wounds healed for years. Go in a hyperbaric chamber for 2 months, you're healed. There's constant studies on it, and so I'm doing that every single morning. I don't eat gluten, I don't eat dairy, I don't eat GMOs. Now, if I'm on the road, I might have to, but most likely I'm bringing my own food with me. Mm-hmm. I'm bringing organic juice. I'm finding that place. That's the kind of shit I do for me. So I don't want you to treat me the way you treat yourself. Mm-hmm. So the repetitions of affirmations, bad or good, leads to belief. Like when I went into Hall of Fame in 2017, I wrote a 27-minute speech. I didn't know it till I got there. They're not supposed to be over 15. So I went and rewrote it. And then the day of, that's a day of. So it was the night before, one of the writers came up and said, let me hear your long one. And I gave it to him. He goes, all right, I got to talk to the head producer. And then he called me back. He said, don't go over 30. So now I've really put myself in the spot. We're going to be first out of the gate. Now I could have been thinking in my head, man, I've been in front of 20,000 people. going to speak in front of 20,000 people and millions of people watching at home. You know, I could have been thinking, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Did you have a heart rate monitor strapped to you?
Oh my God, you know, what was I thinking? What if my iPad, which is my notes, what if it goes down? You know?
Yeah.
What if, I wasn't thinking any of that shit. I had one voice. This is going to be my greatest moment in professional wrestling. I'm going to blow everyone away. Mm-hmm. I want to make them laugh. I want to make them cry. I want to inspire them. That's the only voice. And I won't let any other voice in. People coming up to me, hey, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. And then boom, I'm in my own head. That's the only thing in my head. And I went out there, and now WWE's network is on Peacock. Talk about, you know, a company being worth so much money right now. WWE Peacock rented, not bought, rented the network for 5 years. Everything that's on the network for $1 billion.
Jesus.
Right.
I feel like $1 billion, you should be buying stuff at that point, right? But yeah.
$1 billion. And you might think, that's crazy. Well, that first month, because you get WrestleMania, you get pay-per-views, you get all that. And I think they started at $4.99. I don't know what they're at right now. You know, a month, $4.99 a month, which is cheaper than the network was $9.99. So you just saved half the money. So everybody is going to go on the Peacock, you know, right there. They had 179 million new subscribers.
The first month?
In the first month.
Oh, Jesus.
Now, I'm sure some of them fell off because of WrestleMania, but if half fell off, it's easily going to pay for itself. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's big vision thinking there. And knowing that wrestling fans are they're really dedicated. You know, so if you ever want to see it, just go to Peacock, get on Hall of Fame, and go to 2017. Eric Bischoff, he inducts me. We're first out of the gate. And it's super inspiring. And it was the best thing I've ever done. But I already saw it. You have to see it. The repetition of affirmations leads to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen. Do you know who said that?
No, who said it?
I'll tell you what his affirmation was. This is me saying that. He's never told me this, even though I've been lucky enough to meet him a couple of times. I got some great pictures with him, and he was my hero growing up as a kid. He would say, I am the greatest. I am the greatest of all time. Who is that?
Muhammad Ali.
How do you know that?
Because there's only one greatest.
But you did, right?
No, yeah,
You're 32. You weren't around when he was
around.
Right. You were around later to see some of what he did in film, or fighting, him and Frazier, or Thriller in Manila, whatever the fight was. But Muhammad Ali wasn't my hero. He was my hero because of him being a boxer, because how he talked the shit, but he backed it up. But the thing that made him like my hero of all time is what he did when they tried to take they took his belt away. All he had to do was go in the Army, Navy, wherever he never would have been on the front lines. He would have been paraded around like a peacock. He would have been treated like a god. They would have said the Army, the Navy, anybody who took him in, he would have never had to do shit. And he still could have fought for his world championships, the whole deal. But back then, it was really bad, as far as civil rights and stuff, and he took a stand. And if he don't make that stand, a lot of people don't make that stand. But he did, and he gave up a lot. Think of the mazillions of dollars Ali could have made over that 3-year period. So when you believe in something so strongly that you give up of yourself to follow that dream, and when it's all said and done, he is the greatest of all time on a lot of levels.
Yeah. But
just that that, and to know his quote. If you would have read the same thing, I know his affirmation. I mean, how do you know? Because he said it 1 billion times. He was saying it when he was a teenager. He saw it, and no one could shut him up about it either. And there were plenty of people who tried, black and white, tried to shut him the fuck up, but they couldn't, So, that to me is, the words, the vision is pivotal to everything in life. Just having a family, to having a mate, someone that, is your significant other. You got to be, it's all the way around.
We talked a little bit about, or a lot about big picture, thinking. Can you tell us a little bit about your app? I feel like that's a big picture, That's
it was a big picture, yeah. It was like, it really pulled everything together, because the app isn't just, workouts. And when I first put out DVDs, it was just workouts, And then I get to the system that I put together, which was some inspirational stuff written down, to help you how to set goals, and then we had some recipes. Well, with the app, we're constantly can be adding. Like when I put out DVDs, I'd have to put out all new DVDs again to come out with new workouts. I can think of another workout. Like, I wish I'd filmed that workout that we did today. Even though if it wasn't advanced positioning, it was advanced conditioning. Mm-hmm. And it was a great workout. So I would love that. And I'll do a version of that on the app. But I can always change things. Like, we could add, like, even though we did come up with the DVDs, DDPY Rebuild. And that is for people who can't get out of bed, mm-hmm. Need to work out in a chair, need to use a chair. Like, I could just shift all of that onto one platform. And from the beginner workouts to, the super engaging workouts to super psycho extreme stuff. So that's a workout section. Then there's a whole section on inspiration and inspiring you through whether it's Arthur's video or Vance's or Stacy's or whose ever video it is. And that's where we become a full-blown production company, because we're constantly putting together more stories and more people. Like right now we have the Positively Unstoppable Challenge going on. It's a $250,000 challenge. You can win $250,000 if you're the end-up finalist and you go for 100 books. And out of that 100 books, one of them got $250,000 in it. And the rest got $25,000, which is still a hell of a payday. But every single person, there's like 6 or 8 winners that we pick, and they're all champions, but one person just didn't do the workouts, just didn't lose the weight, had the mental transformation. See, the mental transformation is everything. And a part of the app, the mental transformation is constantly being taught there. And, Motivational Mondays every Monday. Every Friday's Fabulous Friday, where I'm going to show you someone from our group. Right now I'm doing it on our $1 million, or I should say $250,000 finalists for last year, because each one of them I want to put up there on Fabulous Friday. But normally I'm taking it off a Facebook group. That's DDP Yoga, one word, just like this is printed. Like, I always tell people, don't listen to a word I say about my program. Go there. Go on Facebook. There's over 70,000 people on that page. It's the most empathetic. It's the most caring. It's everybody there is like-minded. And people come there looking for hope. The people who got involved in the Positively Unstoppable Challenge last year, every one of them had already started a transformation. So 4 of the 6 finalists, 4 of them had already been, like one guy who won was a guy named Brian Tan. He was down 100 pounds before he entered the contest, and lost the last 70 pounds. During that, because you're 6 months. You start January 1st, you're done July 1st, or June 30th. If you start February 1st, then you're done July 31st. You start, March, then you have 6 months. The contest completely ends at the end of September. And over that period, you take your best 6 months. Well, this guy, Brian Tan, lost 70 pounds, but it wasn't just the 170 pound total loss. It was, who is he as a guy right now? Who is he as a human being? I mean, he's unstoppable. Like, he is completely, every one of them, their transformation's insane. Not just physically, but mentally. Like if you want to get involved in it, and it's not about going there to win money. It's going there to find like-minded people who will help you stay accountable. Everybody helps each other, as opposed to what about me? What about me? What about me? What about me? You know, it's a whole different environment. Like we started it January 1st, and today is the 3rd, and we've already got like 1,600 people signed up, which is a lot. Like last year we had a total of 3,000. This year we'll probably have a total of like 7. You know, people in it. And now how many people continue to be disciplined, like I wrote earlier? How many people, get pulled down by the procrastination? Because when people say they don't have time, that means they're procrastinators. I mean, that's the bottom line. Because very few people who say, I don't have time, don't have time.
If The Rock can make time.
I don't even know. Like, I was the hardest working guy I've ever seen until I seen him. You know, he works an insane level. He's obviously one of those freaks who don't need sleep because he's up at 4:30 every morning. I know he's going to bed at 11 or 12 at night. You know, he's just one of those guys, man. And he's on this roll. You know, that a wrestler is the biggest star in the world is super amazing. You know, and I love the guy, man. I've been around him, and he always makes everybody feel like they're the only person in the room. You know, if he's talking to you, and he just even when he was younger, like when I met him, and I was like, this guy's genuine. He's gonna go. He could go a long way, and his career had started to turn around, and it wasn't that wrestling didn't like him being pushed so hard in the beginning to be this guy. And I mean, there was, as a babyface, he was getting Rocky sucks chants. And when they let him turn heel, bad guy, he became the most entertaining guy on the planet. And of course, he became so entertaining that they turned him babyface. You know, and now he's the biggest star in the world. Pretty cool.
I think that's everything I had. Is there any closing remarks?
I just tell people, also I want to say on the app, which nutrition, we have over 300 recipes. So when people say, how do you eat gluten-free and dairy-free, GMO, blah, 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 go to my site, go to my app. It's all there. You know, we've developed the best recipes. If it doesn't taste amazing, I'm not eating it. So to me, when they come on the app, the first thing they're going to see is the list. And the list is everything that you need to do to be successful. It's the yellow brick road. It's what Arthur did. It's what Stacy did. It's what Vance did. All these incredible transformations that we have, they all did the list. So I made it accessible to everyone. And if you do the list, your life will change. Now, if you're just in jiu-jitsu and you're an athlete already and you've got aspirations of being a top guy and a top, performer on that mat, well, my program can help keep you on it. And who gets out of it? We talked about this earlier. Who gets out of this submission? The guy who's flexible or not, right? Yeah. And the guy who's flexible and strong, that's a different level.
That's the terror right there, that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And doing my program will help you keep like that. So, hey, bro, appreciate you coming over and getting the workout with me. And, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah. I got to download the app now.